Hi, welcome back. We're continuing our discussion on ethics. Last time we talked about the three main concepts of ethics: the good, virtue, and happiness. And we said the good is that which is sought as an end in itself, for its own sake, and not for the sake of anything else. We said virtue is what is sought as a means to the good. We talked about different classifications of virtues. And we said happiness is the effect of possessing what we believe is the good. Now, we're going to be talking about ethical theories. This is sometimes called normative ethics. And there are different ways ethics have been done. So this sentence gives us a little detail. The way we do ethics in my class is teleological. The good is the goal. So telos means goal. It's the end. So ethics is teleological, meaning goal-oriented, directed towards the end in itself. It says it's not deontological. Deon means duty. A lot of people think ethics is about doing the right thing or doing your duty. Immanuel Kant is going to be a deontologist when it comes to ethics. So deontology puts the right thing or virtue as the good. So it's virtue oriented. And then the other category we'll look at, a broad category of ethical theory, is utilitarian, which puts happiness or pleasure as the good. So we want to look at different theories and see where the disagreements are, because there are many theories, and often an ethics class is an examination of the conflicts between these theories. We're not going to do that. We're going to focus on the good, but I will name the theories for you. So the ethics is teleological. Now let's talk about the good, formal features of the good. I think this looks like a good exam question, doesn't it? What are the formal features of the good? Now this may be something you've never thought about. It may be controversial. You might want to give me some pushback. Send me an email or drop me a line. So it starts this way. The good is the moral absolute. And if it's a moral absolute, then the good is not relative. The good is the fixed piece. Other things are relative to the good, but the good is not relative, which means the good for you is the same as the good for me. You want an argument for that? There's one good for all people. Well, if the good is based on human nature, and there's one human nature, we're rational beings, then there's one good for all humans. Okay, so the good is the moral absolute. It's the same for all humans. Now, we may reject what the good is and determine the good for ourselves, but then we're not united. The good is a source of unity as well. We'll see that. So the good is the moral absolute. It is not relative to other moral judgments, but other moral judgments about virtue and happiness are relative to the good. So if you think of it this way, the good is the foundational concept in ethics. Virtue is relative to the good. Why? Because virtues are means to the good. Happiness, which is less basic, is relative to the good. Why? Because happiness is the effect of possessing the good. So this is the moral absolute. This is the fixed piece. Okay, here it is. The good is the source of unity within a person. It is the thing that allows us to make choices. So each person has one good, theoretically. Imagine if you had two equal and competing goods. How would you know what to choose? So these are two ultimate goals, and each ultimate goal has virtues to achieve it. How would you know what to choose? And let's say they're equal. You would be stuck in indecision. So we have one view of the good, although human beings are double-minded, and we might say this is our view of the good and do something else. So we might act as if we have more than one view of the good, but that would mean we're disunited in ourselves. Okay, there's disunity. So the good is the source of unity within a person. It's what allows for us to make choices and have actions. It's the source of unity between two persons. So friendship is based on the good. Friendship is an effect of two people pursuing the good, and between groups of persons. The good is what holds, let's say, families together. It's what holds the institutions of culture together. It's what holds a culture together. It's what could hold a whole civilization together. So the source of unity. Now you might look around and see a lot of disunity, and then you should also notice that it's because we don't agree on what the end in itself is. The good is based on human nature, we've gone over this, which is based on what is real or eternal, our metaphysics. So the moral absolute, the good, is based on the metaphysical absolute, the real. And we have talked about different views of the good in each of the different views of what is real. The good must be easily knowable if there's to be moral responsibility. The good must be clear to reason, if we're going to hold each other accountable for knowing the good or not knowing the good. What's the opposite of the good? Evil, moral evil. All right, now, here are some necessary conditions. It says for morality, but I'm going to change it to rational justification for the good. Okay, necessary conditions for rational justification for the good. So if you're going to say X is the good, then these conditions need to be in place to support that that really is the good. And this may be where it gets a little bit controversial. So think critically, maybe you disagree. All right, the first one is a metaphysical absolute is necessary. If there is no metaphysical absolute, for instance, if all is eternal and nothing is absolute or transcendent, there could be no justified distinction between good and evil, and therefore no morality. Consider the implications of pantheism, polytheism, naturalism, and secular humanism. Is God therefore necessary for morality? Okay, let's go through this a little bit. If you can't distinguish between good and evil, then you can't have the good and you can't have evil. And why are these things being considered? Pantheism says all is God and God is all. It's one. And if all is one, there's no distinction allowable, no distinction between good and evil. So there's no rational justification for saying this is the good. All right, so we need to consider, if we go with a view that all is one, or even dualism, there's no transcendent reality, there's no metaphysical absolute, and thus there's no distinction between good and evil, and there's no basis for rational justification for morality. So we have to ask this question: is God therefore necessary for morality? In what way? In that God is a being that is transcending the material world, transcending the one. There's more than one. And if God creates human beings with a certain nature, like rationality, then the good for humans would be determined by God, that by virtue of his making their nature. So if God creates humans as rational beings, then we can say the good is based on human nature. Human nature is rooted in the metaphysical absolute, and that is God. Okay. The second point, this might be controversial to you, but it's not really that controversial in the history of ethics. If there is no personal immortality, there can be no morality. Where personal immortality means you continue into the future indefinitely. So some worldviews think that humans have a soul, and the soul continues indefinitely, everlastingly. So if your soul does not go on after death, then how do we rationally justify doing good in this life? And there's lots of literature. I think of Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov, where they entertain this question. If there is no God and there is no afterlife, then anything is permissible in this life. And why wouldn't there be? There's no consequences. Immanuel Kant proposed that there must be immortality of the soul and God if there's going to be anything like justice in this world. Why? Because the good person sometimes suffers wrongs in this world, and bad people sometimes never receive justice in this world. So if there's going to be anything like justice, there has to be a future where rewards and punishments are meted out. That's an intuition that is being picked up by Kant, and that is part of this necessary piece for rational justification here. If there is no personal continuity, there can be no future and no purpose. And if there's no purpose, there can be no goal or good, and there could be no moral responsibility outside of going to jail in this life. Okay, so that's the second piece that is necessary for rational justification for ethics. Third piece, if there is no freedom, there could be no morality. So if human beings are determined, either naturalistically or supernaturally determined, then there can be no morality, no rational justification. Why? Because the good as the end in itself is achieved through choice. We choose the good, and we choose things according to the good. And if we don't choose freely, then we can't be held accountable for our choices. If there's no freedom, there can be no choice, and therefore the good is not achievable. Okay, so ethics becomes impossible if there's no freedom. I mean, we're just using words. It's meaningless. Okay, fourth piece, necessary condition for rational justification for ethics. If there is no clarity, there could be no morality. If the good is not clear, then there cannot be rational justification. If it's not clear what the good is, then one cannot be held accountable for pursuing the good. If there's no clarity, then there is skepticism. And if there's skepticism, then there's moral relativism. So moral relativism is rampant today. Everybody's out doing their own thing without any overarching moral claims to people, and that's because we are living in a time of skepticism. Nobody could really know the good, and so it's not clear, so we can't hold anyone accountable, and ethics is relative. I think we're seeing the fruit of that in our day, this relativism. And if everything's relative, then you can't have social justice either, because justice is not relative. Justice is an absolute, and that's a problem for contemporary social activism. So we need clarity to have the good. The good is clear if we're going to have morality and rational justification. And then the last piece, number 5. If there is no rationality, then there can be no clarity and therefore no morality. What is clear could not possibly be otherwise. Its contradiction is logically impossible. One has to stop thinking to avoid seeing what is clear. Okay, so let's think about this. If human beings are not rational, or if reason does not apply to being, and our choices, then the good can't be clear, and there could be no rational justification for ethics. Ethics goes out the window if we're not rational. And we're living in a period right now in the history of philosophy where lots of people think humans aren't primarily rational. And that may be why we're having the ethical problems that we're having, because we don't think this is true. If there's no rationality, there can be no clarity and therefore no morality. So we need rationality as a piece for rational justification for ethics. So let's review what we've gone over so far. We went over the formal features of the good. Actually, we went over the 3 ways of doing ethics: teleological, deontological, or utilitarian. Sometimes it's called consequentialist, based on pleasure. Then we talked about the formal features of the good, and we said it's the moral absolute, the source of unity, based on human nature, easily knowable, has to be easily knowable. Then we talked about the necessary conditions for morality. There must be a metaphysical absolute, there must be personal immortality, there must be freedom, there must be clarity, there must be rationality in order to have rational justification for ethics. Now that we have these formal pieces in place, we can go and look at some ethical theories and see where they go wrong in terms of fulfilling this need for rational justification. Okay, so I'm going to pause here. I will see you next time.